Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ashrafil anbiya mursalin wa ala alihi ashabi ajma'in. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Allahumma inna nas'aluka ilman nafian wa rizqan taiban. A good day to all of you. Salam sejahtera, Wanakkam. I am Dato Dr. Haji Ahmad Nazzan, Pengarah Aizat Training Service. The purpose of recording this video is to hopefully that I can produce one or two series of the video on Lembah Bujang. That is the Bujang Valley, or in Tamil they call it Bujang Pallataka. I'm going to go back to the history of the Lembah Bujang as far as I can remember, which I have read. If you are interested in Lembah Bujang, there are few references, mainly the books by, for instance, Coates, he's an authority on this, Nilakanta Shastri, and the latest is by Lambs and all that, and H.G. Cottridge. These are the authorities from whom, which is my source, where I've got all the information, because what I am presenting is what I have read, nothing from me on my own. Now, Lembah Bujang. Now, before I talk about Lembah Bujang, let me go back to the prelude like bagaimana wujudnya tamadun Lembah Bujang. So, how did it start? If you want to go back, then you have to go back to ancient history. Now, as all of us are aware, ancient history starts with man living or humans living in caves. Why they lived in caves is because of one, safety, secondly is protection from the sun, the rain and the weather. So humans were living in caves, and the main activity was hunting. They used to go to the jungles, hunt for food, mainly animals and as well as fruits and seeds. So they brought back to their families in the caves, and what happens, inadvertently they started to throw the seeds to the outside, and after some time they realized that the seeds had already grown into plants, and they had instant fruits and vegetable plants and all kinds of plants that was eatable. And as time went on, they grew a lot of all these, and it was more than what was enough for them. So what they did, they decided to exchange with their neighbors who are also growing different kinds of plants. So this is the beginning of barter trade. So they give whatever they have and they traded with the neighbors, and subsequently they started to rear domesticated animals like chicken, goats, cows, and these were also used as part of the barter trade. And after some time, this barter trade became quite an advanced activity for them. They realized that the next villages also got different kinds of vegetables, plants and domestic animals. So the trading started to spread from one to the neighbor, from the neighbor to the village, and subsequently most of the villages is producing. And the idea came that they should meet in one place and exchange their goods that they have. This is the kewujudan of the market system. So this is how humans started. You see, the exchanging of goods. This guy has some rabbits, he exchanges with the guy who has caught some fish, the beginning of barter trade. And so they had this marketplace where they'll come and exchange all kinds of goods. There was no use of money at that moment. So it was basically barter trade, and this barter trade started to grow from small markets. They realized that somewhere overseas, somebody was the other island or somebody the other part of the land was also having. So they decided to cross the waters to do this barter trade. See, this is what was happening as in the beginning of the trade system started in this manner. So this trade system, as I said, from village it went to the country, from the country it started to go to other countries, and international trade started in this method. And in one of the most famous international trade system was the Silk Road. The Silk Route of the Silk Road that started about a few thousand years ago. This Silk Road is named Silk Road because the commodity that was very importantly traded was silk. It started from China, will go through this was an overland route. It will start from China, go through the Kush areas, the India, Arabia, and then right up to Rome. So this route which is about 4,000 miles long, will take 4 to 6 months. So this was the first international route for traders. So if you see, as I have showed you before, the route will start from China through the Samarkand, Bukhara, Baghdad, and it will go as far as Constantinople and even Rome. This was the overland route which is called the Silk Route. So how did they carry their goods? Basically, they used to use these camel caravans. They used to call them caravans. The camels were the beasts of burden, and they used to carry all these goods. And the number of camels is not 20 or 30 or few hundred. They used to have even a few thousand camels, because the journey from China to Rome was long and they had to carry a lot of goods, and these goods were traded on the way, not necessarily from China right to Rome. Halfway they will stop at, for instance, Bukhara, or they will stop in Kashmir at that time. And then India was producing cotton and gold, so some of the golds were traded. Silk was given. Now why is silk? Silk was a very important commodity. That's why it is known as silk, because China was the only country that produced silk, and they kept it as a secret for a few hundred years until the others came to know how to produce silk. So China was exporting silk. But why was silk important? The Romans loved silk. The women loved silk because it is very soft. It can be designed and it gave them an elite appearance, and the men also liked it. And subsequently, gold was taken back from Rome to China and to India. India was producing cotton. Cotton was essential to make shirts, trousers and all that. So these commodities were the ones that were involved in the caravan trade, which was from China right to Rome, or from Rome back to China. You see, these are the camels. They were carrying this kind of goods, but there was one flaw here. They cannot carry a lot of goods, number one. Number two is the journey was too long for them. It was too hot. Not only the camels could not withstand the weather, even the humans who followed could not stand up. So they were, and thirdly, the most important was, they used to be waylaid by robbers, caravan robbers they called them. So these robbers will come, attack these guys, and sometimes they'll cut off about 30 over or 40 over camels with their behind, and these guys in the big and in the front will not turn back. They will continue. So every time they travel, they were losing a lot of goods and camels. So they thought that they have to have an alternative route, which is from the land route. They were looking for a sea route. Now this is it. Okay, if you have a look, this is the land route I told you, from China right up to Europe. So the alternate was a sea route, a sea highway, which will use the oceans. It was better to use the ocean and the sea because you can carry a lot of goods. Here you are going to use ship. Huge ships can be used and they can transport large amounts of goods. And secondly, you don't have the problem of robbers. Of course, subsequently they face pirates, but they could deal with pirates because their ships were very big. They could thwart the pirates who attacked them. And thirdly, the monsoon winds helped them in their movements. So they depended on the monsoon. The monsoon wind will play a very important role because the ships were all using sails. So they were able to go from China right to Saudi Arabia using the monsoon winds. So the Silk Road wasn't even a road. It was not paved road. The Silk Road was a name given from the route that from China to Rome. It was about 4,000 miles. The Silk Road began around 2nd century BC, and the Chinese used the Silk Road to trade with the Romans. The Chinese traded spices, ivory, silk, and of course gold. So as I showed you, as I told earlier, the monsoon wind will play a very important role in this international trade called the sea route, which was replacing the Silk Road. Now here you find that this is the northeast monsoon. The northeast monsoon will start from Siberia, it comes here. So the Chinese will used to use this route, come as far as to Sumatra or to Java or to the Malay Peninsula, and then they will stop because they cannot go further, because after 4 months the wind system, monsoon system will change. The southwest monsoon will blow now. So when the southwest monsoon blows, they will go back to China. So during that period, they will have to wait in some area, and their pots began to grow because they was waiting for the change of the monsoon wind. And this will be indicated by the great Chinese traveler Aitzing. Aitzing will travel from China right to India because he was going to Nalanda University. Nalanda University those days was the most famous Buddhist university in the world. So Aitzing has recorded this, and it is in the Chinese annals. So this is where we get the information of what happened, how they came, where they came. In fact, Aitzing will come and stay in Sri Vijaya for a few years, and then he'll continue back to Nalanda and stay and study in Nalanda or Buddhism for almost 12 years. And on the way back, he will stop at a place called Kala, Kadaram or Kataha. I'll come to you later. Now next. So this is the route. So the route used to come here. There, this is Kadaram, the topic of which I am going to talk about, and here you have the Majapahit Empire, and then right to China. So as I said, this is the Silk. You have the overland route and you have the Silk route. And now what happens is, as this was going on, there were three important factors that affected international trade. One is the kingdoms that ruled, the powers that were of those days. The most important powers of those days was, one was the Fatimid dynasty in Egypt, the Abbasid Caliphate in Arabia, the Chola kingdom in India, and the Sung and Tang dynasty in China. Why these? Because these three kingdoms gave importance to trade. Why trade? Because they realized that instead of just trading within, you have to trade outside. When you trade outside, the amount of revenue that was coming into the empires was huge. And it was during these times that the Cholas were ruling southern India. The Cholas, who started from Tamil Nadu, became very powerful. They'll conquer Sri Lanka, Andaman Islands, and as far as the Ganges in northern India. And the Cholas encouraged trade, and they encouraged trade with outside of their country, and they built huge ships, and they got the help from the Abbasids and the Fatimids, because the Arabs are very good in building ships. You cannot build small ships, you have to build huge ships which have to withstand the monsoon wind, the currents, all the storms and all that. So it's a huge ships. So what happens is, the Rajaraja Cholan was a very popular king who encouraged the Tamils to go and trade with other countries. And when this is the beginning of the trade between India and Southeast Asia. So they will start at Nagapattinam and will go. So the early Tamil traders who came from the Chola system were not aware, but they knew that they had got information of a place called Suvarna Bhumi. Suvarna Bhumi is a Sanskrit word which means land of gold. Or Sumatra was known as Suvarna Dwipa, island of gold. So at that time the Malay Peninsula was known as Suvarna Bhumi, and the Claudius Ptolemy in his book will call it Golden Chersonese. Golden means the peninsula of gold. So that was what Malaya was then known as. It was known as Golden Chersonese in English, and in Sanskrit it was known as Suvarna Muni. So the Tamil traders thought there's a lot of gold here. And what happens is, Southeast Asia was famous for one item which everybody was interested in: spices. India had spices, China also had spices, but the spices of Southeast Asia of very high quality and varied spices. So the Indian traders decided to come to this part to trade with the Suvarna Bhumi or the Golden Chersonese for the spice that it was producing. And for instance, the first time they set foot here, as you come across here, what happens, it is stated that Gunung Jerai can be observed about 200 nautical miles from the sea. You can see the peak. So the early traders saw the peak and they said this is the area they took. And when they came here, they came and landed at the mouth of the Merbok River. At that time, the mouth of the Merbok River, the estuaries were very deep, not like now because of silting. Due to silting, today you can't have these kind of things. But at that time it was deep because there was very little silting. So the ships came here. When the ships came to this part, to the bay, the Merbok estuaries, mouth of the Merbok river, that area was populated by the Malays. The Malays were trading among themselves small boats. The boats were dug out, long boats. They were trading, for instance, from Kedah they were trading with Perak, from Perak they were trading with Pahang, and then even to the Sumatran coastal areas. So there was internal small areas trading. So when the Indian ships came here, the Malays went to see what these ships are, because they have never seen such huge ships. The Malays by nature are a very friendly people. So when they came, they knew that these people did not come for war. So they'll go by the small boats and receive the Indian traders, the Tamil traders especially. And the Tamil traders came for one reason, and that is to trade. And this is the beginning of a trade in this area. The Tamils will give name to the place. Now what happens is, if once the Tamil traders, and then they brought a lot of Brahmins who were good in Sanskrit, when you go up the peak of Gunung Jerai and when you look down, this is what you will see. This is what you will see from the peak of, this is a view from the peak of Gunung Jerai. So you look at the Merbok river, it slides like, from the top it looked like a serpent. So the Sanskrit word for serpent is Bujangga. So they named this place Bujangga or serpent. Now, what it calls language evolution takes place from Bujangga, slowly it comes to what until today it is known as the Bujang Valley. So that's how it gets the name. So what happens is that they came and settled here, and they had to wait for the monsoon to change to go back to India. And when they were there, that's when they started to spread their culture, their language, their religion. And slowly the Bujang area became an Indianized colony. They were not ruling, but they were mixing with the people there, trading with the people there, exchanging ideas and the language and their cultures. And that is how the Bujang Valley will wujud from these trading activities that the Tamils conducted. Now, subsequently, for instance, evidence, what kind of evidence you want? Look at this. This is called a Chandi. Chandi means Buddhist temple or an Indian temple. But you must understand, Kedah does not have much granite. Whereas if you go to Angkor Wat, the Angkor Wat complex mainly is built by granites. If you go to South India, the temples are built by granites. But here you have a lateritic soil in Kedah. Lateritic soil, if you go to Kedah and see, it's red in color with small stones like things. So you cannot build huge, you don't have huge boulders. So what they did is they'll make bricks. They mix this thing and laying bricks by bricks and bricks. So this is called a Chandi. It has got a base and it has got the mandapa as well as the area where the praying was taken place. But because of the lack of granite stone, they couldn't build the pillars. If you go to India, to the temples, huge long pillars, because they cut the granite brick. Here there is no granite around here. These will not stand. The height is not sufficient for the lateritic soil. So what happened is they'll chop all the trees around there, take huge branches, and they were the ones that acted as the beams as well as the tiang for the thing. And over time, the bricks stayed back. All the wood began to rot, reput. That is why you don't find the pillars. The pillars disappeared because of the weather. It's a very rainy weather, hot. So that is why you have the base, and this is a Chandi. You can find this Chandi in Merbok in many areas as well as in Jambi in Sumatra. So what happens is, how do we know that there was an Indian civilization, that the Indians came here, traded, and they spread their culture and religion? So what happens in the 1840s, right? The archaeologists will decide to excavate, and this is what they found, a small sample of the findings. They excavated and they found a lot of statues. If you see, these statues are very familiar to many of the people. This statue, for instance, is a statue of Ganesha. Ganesha means Hinduism. So Hinduism was practiced here and Buddhism was practiced here. So the two religions that were practiced here is Buddhism and it's only one photograph of the many statues and artifacts that were dug up and which are now kept in the museum in Lembah Bujang. So see, this is a very old statue and this is an indication that Hinduism thrived here. If you see, these are some of the things that were excavated in the areas. If you look at this, very familiar, this is the grinder that they used. Over the years, the Malays modified, and you can still see in in fact many years ago, you could have seen all these in the Malay kampungs areas. They used to use the grinder, and this is a sugarcane production machine. They used to push the sugar canes into this holes here, push it or turn it around, and the sugar cane water will come out. So these were the artifacts that were dug up from Lembah Bujang. So you see this is also part of Indian as well as Malay culture. If you have all noticed that those days the Malay ladies used to use this to tumbuk. So these were some of the many of the artifacts found in Lembah Bujang, which showed that it was the Indianization took place there. This is Chinese. So what happens is Lembah Bujang, or which the Tamils call it Kadaram and the Arabs call it Kala, attracted Arab traders, Indian traders as well as Chinese traders. Now relics of Chinese is this. The Chinese level, when they started to dig up, they found this porcelain earthenware of the Sung and the Tang dynasty. So the Chinese traders came here and traded, the Arabs came here and traded, and the Indians. So Lembah Bujang or Kadaram was an entrepot trade. The Malays used to collect all the spices and all the beads and all that in the Malay Peninsula, and then the Arabs used to bring perfumes, which they are famous for. The Indians brought cotton and the Chinese brought silk. So it was a huge entrepot trading center. Now, this is an example of the Chandi. See, the Chandi that you see in Lembah Bujang is small. Only the base is there. But then the Chandi in Jambi, Sumatra, if you go there, these are big Chandis compared to the Chandis in Lembah Bujang. So the another one, you see how high it is. The one in Lembah Bujang, only the base remains, whereas in the Chandis in Jambi are huge. So there was Indianization of Southeast Asia. Now if you want to know more about Indianization of Chinese Southeast Asia, read books written by Bilveer Singh, Coates and Neelakanta Sastry. They will tell you about the Indianization of Southeast Asia. Now just for a break now, because I've been talking for some time, a short break. See, this guy is my hero, once upon a time my hero. He's everybody, most of the Indians will know him. He's MGR. Why I bring MGR into the picture is, if those days the Indians, the traders, the Chinese, the Arabs could achieve, we can also achieve. He was just an actor, and he'll go up to the ladder to become Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu for 2 terms, an indication that anybody can achieve their dreams. Now back to Kadaram, back to Lembah Bujang. Now I'm nearing the end of the talk. Now one thing that I must not miss is 1025. Now 1025 is recorded history. There, if you go to Tanjavur in India, or Mahabalipuram, or Gangaikanda Cholapuram, they have inscriptions on these stones, huge granite stones, which will describe that in 1025 Rajendra Cholan will come to Southeast Asia. Why he came to Southeast Asia? Because at that time Kadamaram was in the north, Kedah. Srivijaya was in the south of Sumatra, but it was the most powerful empire in that region. And the Srivijayan king was controlling the states of Malacca. It doesn't matter if he controls. But what he did is, he started to impose heavy taxes on the ships. He encouraged piracy. Why he encouraged piracy is because these ships were passing his area, carrying all kinds of huge amounts of goods, but he was getting nothing. The taxes that he gets from his people is from petty planting. Very little money you get. So when the pirates go and raid and bring, that brings a lot of finance for the king. So here, Kulatongan, he is a famous guy, he was doing harass. So the Tamil traders will go to the Chola king. That time it was Rajendra Chola in 1025, and he'll tell, please Lord, help us, that Kulatunga Raman is harassing us, we cannot trade peacefully. He's harassing the Chinese, he's harassing Tamil and the Arabs. And in 1025, Rajendra Chola will come and invade Sri Vijaya and capture the king and take it back. And that was in fact the beginning of the downfall of Sri Vijaya. And when Sri Vijaya came down, Kadaram was also going away. Now, Kadaram will evolve until the advent of Islam. Once Islam comes to Southeast Asia, Islam comes to Malaya from the Arabs, it's the beginning of the fading away of Lembah Bujang. Now, if you have at the time and the interest, go to Cerotokun. Cerotokun is in Bukit Mertajam. For information, Cerotokun everybody will know, because that's where Anwar Ibrahim grew up. So, in Cerotokun, near the Senen's church, there is a boulder, a huge boulder with Sanskrit inscriptions which will tell, which correlate to the Lembah Bujang area. That means the Lembah Bujang area, Indianisation came as far as BM, Bukit Mertajam, and as far as the Gunung Jerai. It was a huge area. This is evidence of Indianization of this whole area. So, principally, this is my first production of a video. I'll continue with about the Lembah Bujang, what you can gain from Lembah Bujang, what has happened to Lembah Bujang now, and about the museum, the two museums that are in Lembah Bujang. So, I told you among the heroes that you should worship is the other one is great Nelson Mandela, and to the Tamils it is Thiruvalluvar. And as a Muslim, I conclude by saying wabila wa taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Nandri, vanakkam.